Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all today? I hope that you are all well. I hope that there is a summery feel to wherever you are. And even if you are in the bleakest of midwinter, whichever part of the world you're in, there is always that light that shines ever brightly within us. And sometimes we tend to forget that. We look to the outside world for happiness, for peace, and for joy. And somehow it goes far away from us when we do that. It escapes through our fingers. Because really, everything and anything that is worthwhile is actually deep within us. And that's something that I've learned through my life, that all the answers that you could ever find are within us. There is something beautiful out there. There is something divine that creates this planet, that creates all the planets, the worlds, and all of creation. And it's important not to forget that. It doesn't matter what you believe in. We can't deny the truth, and the truth will shine eternally. And I just said to my guest before we came on, I'm really, really quite honoured and delighted to welcome my guest today, who is Jack W Gregory. Jack is a journalist, investigator, and film consultant, and also an actor. Jack was a former criminal, debt collector, and homeless addict who turned his life around using his creative talents. Having struggled with mental illness his whole life, his road on this life journey has not been an easy one. Jack got clean from drugs in 2014 and began to change his life. In 2015, he became seriously ill, where he died for 4 minutes and, as a result, developed brain damage through hypoxia. The trauma caused Jack to have a breakdown, and this very event changed his life forever. Jack is also known as the accidental journalist and has a popular live webcast via Zoom and Facebook Live called Live and Undrugged, in which he has interviewed people from all walks of life, ranging from celebrities, former criminals, and people in recovery. He likes to share his story across the world on various platforms in the hope that through his story, he can bring a positive change in people's lives. Today, he shares his incredible story. Welcome, dear Jack.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming on. How are you today?
I'm good. Just managed to get sat down and a bit relaxed. Just
good. Have you got a cup of tea or coffee there?
I have. You'll never find me far away from a cup of coffee.
Well, I've got 2 bottles of water, and I always do that. And one is sparkling, and one is still. And for some reason, I don't know what that is, but I've always got these bottles of water with me. I think it's a little sort of, what's life if you can't have a little bit of coffee, a little bit of water or tea, isn't it?
Yeah.
The small things that cause, the greatest pleasure, I think.
Yeah, well, I gave up everything else, so coffee's the only thing left on my list.
Oh, now, talking of which, my goodness, I have to say to all the people listening out there, Jack's story, all my guests have a fantastic story because every life has this incredible way of unraveling itself. And, you think sometimes your life begins in one way as a child and ends up in a completely different way many, many times, I think, through our lifetime. But Jack, you have an exceptionally extraordinary life story. And where do I begin? Let's go right back to the beginning and tell us a little bit about your life, how it all began, before we go into all the different avenues.
Yeah, so I feel like I should probably carry a trigger warning because, you know, as a person, because my life is just a constant trigger warning. So I do apologize. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have any memories before I was 8. I was kind of a shy, meek kid with no real strength. You know, I was kind of the bullied kid, and then my first trauma, which is the one that sent me down the longest road, was I remember my mum sitting me on her knee, and it was the weekend of my birthday, my 8th birthday. So you're looking at around 1985, I think. And I'll always kind of vividly remember that look, that she sat me on the knee, and my dad was sat in his chair reading his paper with his glasses hanging over and occasionally peeking over. And my mum said, "You know, I love you." Yeah. I won't do anything for you, but you need to know you're not our real son. You're adopted. We have to tell you. And looking back in retrospect, I can see that it broke her to do that. And I didn't, when she said that, I didn't hear that I was loved and that I was loved so much that I was taken in by a family that wanted me. All I heard was, "You're not wanted by someone else. You're not wanted by a real mum." And that sent me down like I say, that sent me down a road of deception. And the way that I dealt with it was, I didn't have an existential crisis at 8, and I didn't know who I was or where I was from. So I started to make these worlds up in my head, and I started to make these stories up. I couldn't read or write, but you know, and I started pretending to be other people, and I started to lie to myself, to other people, because it gave me comfort. Because if I couldn't be the person that I knew that I was before that, I could be anybody that I wanted after. And yeah, my life became, it became difficult after that.
And that was at the age of 8. And did they say to you who your parents were, who your real parents were?
Yeah, so I was told that my mum, that I was born in Glasgow, and that my mum was young. And probably mentally ill. I didn't know anything else. You know, I've since found out. I met my real mum. I had a relationship with her, but yeah, no, that's all I knew. So I went through life not knowing really who I was. I knew I was born in Scotland, and that was about it.
So at the age of 8, which, you know, they say up until the age of 7, you know, children remain children. From the age of 7 onwards, they're crucial years. You were faced with the trauma of not really knowing who you were.
Yeah.
Was that an immediate reaction, Jack, to this shock? Did your, I suppose, personality change overnight, or was it something that began this roller coaster of emotion and trauma that then led on to other things?
I think it pretty much changed overnight, to be honest. You know, I was still very close to my mum for a lot of years, and my dad. You know, I love my mum and dad to bits, but it was, you know, when you've got such a little mind, and I was seen as a kid with low intelligence. I was brought up in a town, a mining town, that was surrounded by mining towns in Yorkshire, that was affected, but and still is affected by that when the mines were closed. My family were better off than most. My dad didn't work in the mines, and neither. My mum was a social worker and my dad worked on the train, so we had a better life than some of the other kids. But still, I felt different, and all the other kids thought I was weird. And I was, to be honest, probably not the easiest to get on with. And when I did find a friend, I got a bit clingy, and then that would push him away. And I'd just lie and lie and lie, and that was my go-to knee-jerk reaction for a lot of things over the years. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty much the trauma was straight away, and it was just over the next few weeks, few months after I was told that, I think my behaviour just got worse.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember that time at all?
No.
No.
Not much. Not much. I remember bits and bobs, some of the kids around the street, and I just know that I wasn't liked very much by the other kids. Whatever their reasons were, I always felt like the outsider. And to be honest, all these kids were a lot physically stronger than me, and I wasn't very physically strong. I always had a brain on me. I was good with words, but I just, I couldn't get it down on paper. I had no way of venting it, so I would speak it out, and these lies would come out, and that got me in a lot of trouble for quite a while.
And when did you meet your mum, your real mum, for the first time?
Oh no, you're talking 2008.
Okay, and what about your dad, your real dad?
I didn't really know much about him. I know he. I didn't really know much about him, to be honest.
So you met your mum in 2008. So how old were you?
So I must have been late 20s, mid to late 20s. And
how was that meeting?
Well, it was all right. I mean, I'd kind of looked into it, and then I got a phone call from this guy asking to speak to Mr. Bissett, and Bissett is a name that I was born with, and I said I haven't been called that in a long time. And he said, his very camp voice it was. He said, "I'm your mother's best friend, and I'm ringing to make contact." And I burst into tears. I kind of had my life back on par then for the first time in a long time, and I cried and I said, "Look, I'm going to have to ring you back." My daughter was only a few months old, and I feel better with food, so we went out and had a fry up. That's the go-to thing for me, a nice fry up. And we went out for a fry up, and my wife at the time and I we sat and talked about it, and then I rang her later on, and we made introductions, and I spoke to all of her sisters, and then we just built a relationship up through that.
Now, there's so many things that went on in between.
Yeah.
You begin, because I have to say to everybody out there, if you were to sort of read about all the things that Jack has been through, all the things that Jack has done and achieved, also in this time, it's like living 10 lifetimes, Jack.
Yeah, 2 lifetimes really. That the old me and the new me.
So tell us a little bit. Okay, so there was an old you,
Okay.
and then there's the new you,
Yeah.
which is probably the real you now.
Yeah, because I didn't know who I was back then. I really didn't. So I, like I say, I began to lie, and they saw the Wakefield District Council saw me as low intelligence. So I was taken out of the mainstream school system and put into the special school system. And this is about 12 years old, I guess. And it was a small school in the middle of a town called Pontefract. And a mile in it's pretty much a mile in every direction is farms. And because I lied so much, that's where I'd begun to be abused by appropriate adults sexually, and teachers, people that call themselves teachers anyway. And they picked up on that, I lied for comfort, and they said, well, nobody will believe you anyway. So I locked that away for many, many years. And then when I ran out of school, while I was at school at dinner time, I was running drugs for some of the local dealers.
How old were you at the time?
15, coming up to 16, because I could get back in time for pudding at dinner time.
Right.
So I'd run knockoff VHS. They just started really in England. We're doing the knockoff CDs. I think it was, show how long ago it was. It was Prodigy Fat of the Land. Was one of the first CDs that I was running about. And porn, stuff like that. And I was making money. So by the time I left school, I knew how to make money in a dishonest way. So I became really good at it. I became really good at being other people. I came really good at pretending to be other people. So I would work with some of the short con firms and long con firms based out of Leeds. And I would make, I'd make my money, as well as doing like honest jobs, like working in a key cutting shop and doing paper rounds and stuff like that. And it became really difficult for me to be able to distinguish from reality and fiction at one point. So I took to drugs, and drink, and they helped me put away some of these feelings. So I guess at 14, 15, that's when I found myself at my first AA meeting, really, recovery meeting.
At 14?
Yeah, I mean, this was through one of the teachers, and I didn't know that, he said that he wouldn't tell my parents and that he'd help me, and he'd help me get clean. And he introduced me to this guy called Dale, and he was to become my sponsor, and they were abusing me between them. And, it was just a way for them to traffic me and keep me quiet, while under the guise of helping a troubled kid. So when I could leave school, I left school, and then I left home and got harder into the drugs, harder into the drink. I was living in a bed sit in Pontefract, a place called Horsefair. I had a mate who was really struggling with his sexuality, struggling to tell his parents that he was gay, and we went out on a massive bender at one point, and then we, on the way back, We'd been to see his brother and stuff, and because he was a dealer out Bradford way, Tong, and on the way back, we came to a level crossing, and he lit a fag and took a drag off it and smiled at me, and then put the cigarette in my mouth and hugged me and told me he loved me, and then just ran towards the level crossing as it was dropping, and he was hit by a train. And that broke me. That really broke me. And I tried to commit suicide. And I said, I don't even know why. I tried. I ended up in a hospital, and I bumped into a girl that I went to school with, and she was in for the same sort of thing. And, what do two people like that do? They decide to have a relationship, and that was not good. And yeah, it all got too difficult. It got to the point where I just wanted to just fall off of the earth. I was living in Portsmouth. I got into rehab. I was doing day rehab as well. I did Prince's Trust, and by the time I'd finished the Prince's Trust, I was 6 months sober. This was one of my first time getting proper sober. And then in, I suppose, April 2001, I moved to Norwich. And I was sober, and I was sober for quite a few years. And, I led a good life, and, people knew me, and I started writing, getting involved with the local film industry. I started writing films and stuff like that. I'd learned to read and write in jail in like 1999, 2000. And then I always said if I could write, it'd be dangerous, but I never really did anything with it. But I always had a head for poetry. My best friend, who his name was Darren, before I left Pontefract, he was like a mentor. He used to take me DJing and taught me how to do close-up magic, and he helped me keep playing, and not be on the drink. And he kidnapped me from my flat one day and took me up to his, and threw me in his spare bedroom, and there was bottles of water there and food there, and he locked the door, and he nailed it shut, and sat there and took the abuse while I went through cold turkey, and sat there and hugged me and loved me all the way through it. And I'll never forget that. We lost him not long after, and that's why I moved. We lost him in the October, and that's pretty much why I left. He was in a car accident, and he ended up with thrombosis in his leg, and it travelled to his brain, and he passed away a few weeks later in hospital. But I knew I had to get away from that. So Portsmouth was good for me in the point that I could, I'd got away from that, and I'd started getting clean, and then I'd met the woman that would become my first wife, and she lived here in Norfolk, in Norwich, and I moved here, and I'd had a good life, and I took on her kids as a step parent, and we got married in 2006, and we had our daughter in 2007, and it was my absolute world. And it was all right. And then I started drinking again and doing the odd drug here and there. My marriage started to fail because I became a person that I didn't want to be. I cheated on my wife, I'm not going to lie. And the marriage ended, and I ended up like in different places. living with different people, staying on sofas. I'd have a flat for a short amount of time, and then my money would get stopped, and then I'd get booted out, and I got stuck in this vicious cycle, you know. And I couldn't deal with it, and I ended up homeless and back on the gear, and out fighting and you know, for money and stealing and doing whatever I could. Doing whatever I could. And I'd been living in I've been living in the spare room of a young guy that was just as broken as I was, and you know, I turned up at a food bank one day, and I'm sat there, and you know, they're serving coffee. The lady that's serving the coffee, she saw my Doctor Who t-shirt, and she said, "Oh, I love Doctor Who." You know, and we got talking, and she was really kind, and she bought me tobacco and took me out for a sandwich, and you know, went above and beyond, despite being told not to by other people in the thing that I was bad news. But she did. Yeah, we got together as a couple. We're now married, by the way, but yeah, I mean, we got together, moved in with her. Things were going good. I started going to a church, started looking at my faith. And then in the February 2000, actually, sorry, before I moved in, I found myself sat in a crack house on the floor with a bottle in my hand. And this must have been about 10 o'clock at night, because at least it was like a roof over my head. And I said, God, look, I don't even know if you exist. I like to think you do, but why are you putting me through this? I can't do this anymore. If you do exist, either kill me and take me away, or take away this hunger, take away this thirst, because I can't live like this anymore. And I fell asleep. And I woke up at about 1 minute past 12, 2 minutes past 12 on the 27th of June, 2014. And I haven't used a day since. It was taken away. The will to use was taken away. And I moved in with my partner, and I was going to church, and things were great. And then that October, I started getting a bit poorly. And then we had a good Christmas. And then February 2015, I started feeling really, really ill. Ended up in hospital with stomach problems. And then came out, and then within 2 weeks, I'd started feeling really, really ill. I'd gone to pick my daughter up on a Friday. We walked about 100 yards, and every single bit of breath just came out of my lungs. I exhaled, and I had to sit down. I couldn't breathe. That night, I shook so hard on the bed that I nearly fell off the bed. The Saturday morning, I managed to have a bacon sandwich. The Saturday night, I didn't sleep at all. I was surviving on painkillers and prayer. The Sunday morning, I woke up and I rang my ex-wife, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to go to the hospital. I'm going to have to ring an ambulance. She said, don't do that. You'll scare our daughter. I'll come and get you. I'll drop you off at the A&E, and you can give your daughter a kiss so she knows it's going to be all right. So that's what I did. And that was about 4 o'clock, I suppose. By 7:30, I was dead. Type 2 lung failure. Tuberculosis, double pneumonia, pleurisy, some disease that they hadn't seen in about 40 years. I'd had people coming in to visit me while I was in there, and I'd had some points where I was kind of vivid and talkative, and other points where I would just fall into my head, and I became convinced that I'd caused a pandemic. And then that's when the drugs that they had me on caused hallucinations, and yeah, I was convinced I'd caused a pandemic, and that everybody was dying outside my door. I was convinced that I was being punished for every single bad thing that I'd ever done, every lie that I'd ever told. I thought I was being punished for, the life that I'd chosen to live. I had so much guilt and shame buried inside of me that, that I kept back. Even after I stopped the drugs, I kept it back, and I didn't let people into it, but it all just came out, and I broke. I was convinced that my daughter had died, and that they forced me to do a Skype call, and they were controlling her like a puppet, and it was I can talk about it now, but I couldn't talk about it for a long time. I was so broken. I wouldn't eat. I was 6 stone 6 ounces, laying in a hospital bed. I had to learn to walk again, to eat again. And, I was told that I had hypoxia, and I'd ended up with slight brain damage. It was all dark. My vision was dark, and it was just, I was convinced that people were out to get me. They were holding kangaroo court outside the door. And then I think the drugs must have started wearing off, and some clarity started coming to mind, because that's when I met Jesus at the end of my bed, and he didn't really say anything, but I saw him quite clearly, and he just smiled, and things just started getting clearer. And people, I don't know, some people think I'm a bit of a nutter, but, that was the most thing that gave me clarity. And I hadn't had a wash for weeks, and I managed to wash myself. And, I know a few days before that the pastor from we spoke about this the other day, actually, the lead pastor from my church had come up to pray for my soul because they thought they were going to lose me. And I went from that to having clarity and having that fog lifted. And I started to eat, and the nurses were really surprised. I'd gone mute for a while, and I started to talk again. And I'd had a job before I went in there, and I got made redundant while I was in there, and I got a bit of redundancy money. So I decided that they said I could leave if I hit 8 stone. So every day I would have my breakfast and then go down for a second breakfast. And then people would bring me sweets and tins of Spam, and all you could smell through the ward, because the nurses were so happy that I was eating again, was this Spam cooking in the nurses' quarters. The most glorious smell you'll ever smell in a hospital, I'm telling you. And I started putting on weight, and within 2 weeks, I was up to 8 stone, and they let me out, and that's when I started rebuilding my life and looking at my trauma, because these are the things that I'd never looked at before, and the reason that I kept relapsing, and the reason that I had so much guilt and so much shame for some of the stuff that I'd done was because I'd had all this guilt and shame and hurt. So I started looking at it. I started working with it with the elders at my church, and I started looking at myself. And then I was contacted by a friend who was working as a in the casting department on a film that was being filmed at a few miles outside Norwich, and I was asked if I would go and speak to the director about the life that I'd had. So I said, yeah. And I was taken out there, and the director was Joanna Hogg, and the film was A Souvenir. And I spoke to her, and she gave me a part, and I got to act with Tilda Swinton's daughter, Hannah, in her first ever film, and I got to work with Tom Burke and tell him about the life that I'd had. And then I was, even before I'd left the set, I was invited back for the second one because they knew it was going to be followed up, and that it was partly produced by Martin Scorsese. And then I did a couple of films in between, short films in between, and I went back for the second part, turned down a part in Jingle Jangle to go and work on The Souvenir Part 2. And then between that, I wrote my first book, Personal Apocalypse, which was about my life and what I'd gone through, but kind of a poetic interpretation. And then in 2017, it would get a bit darker again, and I would have some mental health issues because, like I said, I'd had built a relationship with my real mum, and I lost her to cancer. I spent the first lockdown watching nothing but 80s films because I couldn't cope. And then the second lockdown, so you're talking about October 2019, a friend of mine, Jason Edwards, who's a hostage and barricade negotiator by trade, said, you need to do something. He said, you need to either write a new book or put something creative. He says, you need to build your confidence back up. He says, because I know what sort of man you can be when you've got your confidence and when you've been creative. Mm. So he said, you can interview me. And so we did this interview over Facebook Live. And 1.2k people watched it. So I said, I'll do it again. And then I got a friend of mine, Dominic Negus, former gangster and licensed and unlicensed bare knuckle fighter. And that got 1.9k. And so, I just started doing that. And I started interviewing people that had been broken by life and started getting stories, and then realizing that actually we all share some similarities. And I knew that I needed to start getting honest, because lies had dogged my life for so many years before. I knew that if I was going to do this, I needed to be honest. And if I wanted, I believe that once you've been through certain amounts of trauma, or, when you've got through the other side, and when you've lived a certain life and you've got through the other side, and you've changed your life, you have a duty to educate. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to educate. I spent 6 months working with escapees of human trafficking, and realised that actually I'd been trafficked as a kid, because that's what that was, domestically. And I wrote a book about it.
What's the book called?
The book is called Between the Streetlights and Red Lights. And it's really, it's kind of two separate books in one, really. One is telling you how to spot anybody that's been trafficked and what to do and how to help people. And the other is people's stories, and then how I felt when I was interviewing them. I've just released both books, but yeah. And then I started getting people saying, "Can I come on and tell my story?" I've got a story to tell, but no way to tell it. And I knew that I had to be a voice for people that felt they didn't have a voice. And yeah, that's when I started doing other people's podcasts. And, you know, because by giving other people a voice, I'd kind of lost my voice. So then I decided to reach out to other people, other podcasters, and say, I've got a story to share. And here you find me today, you know.
Yes.
I've probably missed a few bits out and stuff like that. But in essence, you know, that's where you find me sat in my shed doing a podcast.
I'm left speechless, Jack. Listening to your life, I really didn't want to interrupt because I wanted to hear it myself, but also I wanted the listeners to hear it in, as you say, in the essence of its rawness of a person laying bare their soul, in effect. And I think that's important in this life, is to actually, I felt I walked the journey with you, in fact, listening to you and the things that you have been through, but yet through it all. And I don't want to make it something that's not important, because I think it's truly important what you have been through. But also what comes across to me is that you have this incredible fate, I think, of somehow being pulled through this chasm of fire. And by the divine decree, you have come out of it the other side. So many times it seems you've been dead and reborn and dead and reborn. And, you know, it's a constant state of death. And I think, you know, someone once said, if you want to really know how to live, then you really have to accept that you're going to die at any time. You know, to be reminded of death constantly is to really know how to live. And I think that's what you have done. And I'm astounded by your strength of spirit that has carried you through. And I'm sure these experiences of these highly spiritual experiences that you've encountered seem to have been the turning points in your life that have somehow sort of, the hand of the divine has reached down to you and pulled you back out again, and reached down and pulled you back out again, which one would say God has great plans for you.
Yeah, I believe that. I do believe that. You know, my church runs a kind of a theology school called the School of Supernatural Life, because we believe in a God that is so naturally supernatural and supernaturally natural. And the church isn't a place for, you know, for people to go and be in a gallery of good people. It's a hospital for broken people. And, you know, I've learned so much. You know, I now help out at that. And it is, we call it facing giants. Me sharing my story was facing a giant, you know, and getting honest was facing a giant. Because if I was really honest with myself, that there was a lot of fear there was a lot of resentment, there was a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And these are the things that I needed to shed before I could get any further in my physical journey, mental journey, and spiritual journey, you know, because my mental health had been up and down for years, and it's only now in the past coming up to 8 years that I've been clean, and that I've actually started to find that I believe that when I was baptized, the old me died and the new me was born. So I was given a clean slate, and I could become anything that I wanted. And it's not been easy, and I've not been perfect, and I've made mistakes, and you know, but I've got a relationship with my daughter. She comes to stay at the weekends, and she's seen me go from this man that she loved very dearly to a man that she nearly lost. And, you know, she's been my one constant all the way through. You know, I don't usually like do a lot of my poetry, but I wrote a poem when I'd got sober, and I was sat in a park, and my daughter's always been kind of my healer. So I hope you don't mind indulging me for a moment, but
please go ahead.
It's basically that moment of clarity that I got when things had started feeling better. You know, and this was before I moved here, and this was kind of before the massive breakdown. But this was when I'd first got sober, and it kind of puts where my head was, and how I needed to look at my mental health. It's called Playground Battleground.
Okay.
The sun shining, burning brightly on a gentle July afternoon. Heat kisses the back of my neck, yet slowly, soft summer breeze cools the skin on my aging face. And it feels nice. So nice. So there I sit silently, my gaze fixed upon her beauty. And she dances to the playful tune of childhood, skipping and laughing. She, away on her travels, her imagination working overtime, having an adventure in her own personal wonderland. So I wear a look of pride and love upon my face, a look every doting father will wear. Playground now full, other children joyfully playing to their own childhood songs as their parents look upon them with a similar gaze to my own. So I smile. Yet as she plays alone, and sadness begins to haze my view. Yet she smiles, and I wonder why. Her playful spirit now interrupted as she is taken away from her wonderland in one fleeting moment as she rushes to the aid of an injured child. To her, in her mind, an injured comrade fallen in the battle of the playground war. Wounded, his knee grazed, he's shaking, crying and filled with fear. And she, ever caring. Her instinct overtakes, and she looks upon her fallen friend with the same loving stare I have seen so many times before. The same loving look she gave her father all too many times before. And it's empathy personified. Her words wise, reassuring and calming. And healing comes as it always does as she smiles. His crying now a gentle sob as his fear begins to subside. And she is so old for one so young. And she gazes lovingly at his tear-stained and dirty face. Her smile turns to grin as she softly says, "Wanna play?" She takes him by the hand, friends now for the lifetime of her stay in the playground battleground, knowing in reality she may never see him again when Daddy takes her home. Yet she smiles. And I still wonder why. So I sit there silently, peacefully for the first time in a long time, filled with pride, and once again, I feel nice. And it's so nice to feel nice. Yeah.
So deep felt.
Yeah. And I still read that, you know, and not through any sort of vanity. I read it because it reminds me of the journey that I've been on, the journey that she's been on as my daughter.
Yeah.
the difference that she sees in her father. She no longer sees her father as the man trying to punch down a pine door just to get to her because he thought that her mother wasn't going to let him see her. Not the man full of rage and full of anger, not the violent man, not the liar, not the thief, not the man that everybody says that her dad is, actually the man that she sees as her dad. And I suppose that.
How old is she now?
She will be 15 in May.
Oh, goodness. Already. Where does time go?
Yeah.
Where does time go? A whole lifetime.
Yeah. And she must have only been about 7, 8 there.
My goodness. And you've done a poetry book, you said, about your life. And what is that called?
So that's called A Personal Apocalypse, the poetic ramblings of a troubled man.
And is that available to buy?
It is available to buy. It's on Amazon.
Okay.
Or you can get to the link for both my books through my website, jwgreg.wordpress.com. It's not, I wouldn't say it's fully a poetry book. It is it's the poems that I've written through the years with explanations, but it's a memoir with a poetic overtone, if you like.
Yeah.
It's a bit different to your average gangster book. It's a bit different to your, it's not something you'd expect to come from a guy that's been quite violent in his life, to be honest. So
I want to ask you, Jack, there's so many questions I want to ask you, but I don't want to also take it away from the heartfelt and openness that you have shared with us today. And I really want to thank you for that, because that takes a huge amount of courage to be able to talk so openly and frankly about a very, very, you can't even put that into words, a very traumatic and, oh my goodness, I don't even know what to say, life that just listening to it has really, I will think about this for a long time. But you have instilled hope in me, for sure, because, and I hope in all the listeners out there, because you've done it. You've climbed so many mountains within yourself. And I know each day, we have to take each day as it comes. And it's the only real time we have is this moment in time. And I think when we look at life like that, it doesn't become so daunting. You've made it through this day, and let's see what's in store for another day, as opposed to worrying about what's been, what's happened, what's gone, because we can't change that. But what you've done fantastically is change your life. Not only change your own life, you are now changing people's lives. How does that make you feel?
I'm humbled at times. I'm still surprised that people listen to me. I go to my church. We have a food club on a bit like a food bank on a Tuesday morning. I go down to the church to program the computer for the school, and she bought a copy of my book just to, I think, just to support me. I don't think she was expected to like it or no, but she'd read it within a week, and then on the Tuesday night when I saw her at the school, she said, I was blown away about your honesty and how brutally honest that you were in the book, and how open. She said, I've never heard things explained like that. And I get dogged with doubt at times, and I doubt my, I I doubt what I do. I doubt my work, like anybody. But I'm still humbled by it. You know, I still get the odd comment on the YouTube videos, on the Facebook videos, and that people said, you know, I got contacted by someone that had been through sexual abuse, and they watched one of the interviews that I did, and it gave them hope.
Yeah.
And I'm blown away by that by the fact that actually I've gone from this person that people would cross the road to get away from, to this person that people actually listen to and take advice from. I never thought I could be that person. I never thought that I'd be that, you know, that mentor. Because I didn't believe that I could ever be anything but a mess up. I didn't believe that I could ever achieve anything in my life, because I was told so many times that I wouldn't. You know, and I feel happy, and, you know, I still have my mental illness and that, you know, and I still suffer from PTSD, and, you know, it gets hard at times. But if my life should be anything, it should be a aid to show people that there is hope. So one thing I have, that's one word that's followed me my whole life, is hope. The church that I go to is called Hope. And I have that for the first time in a long time. I have so much that I thought I would never get. You know, who would have thought 8 years ago that I'd be sat here in a converted garden shed that's been turned into a little studio with full of my, you know, VHS and, you know, a little bit of a man cave, and talking to people like you.
Isn't it incredible how life, through some form of grace, can completely change?
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's humbling.
Yeah.
It's humbling. I never knew what humble felt like until I truly felt it. There's so many people that can fake humble, but I think once you feel it for that first time, you'll never feel it any other way. Humility is so important, and I you know, I've worked hard on my recovery. I have worked hard, and, you know, my family have worked hard beside me, and, you know, my church, and I give credit to God. But you know, and it's great that we do that, but I also need to give credit to myself that you know,
you do.
I think we forget that, you know, we give all the credit to God, and God likes, you know, it's great that God gets the credit, and I couldn't have done it but there for the grace of God. But, you know, I've worked hard. There are still people that think that I haven't changed. There are still people, you know, I get the odd troll, and there are people that are jealous of success, and there are people that will never want to see me do anything but fail. But I'm not doing it for them. All I can do is love them enough not to let them get on my mind, because if I do, I then put myself in danger of, you know, getting resentments, and I can't afford to do that. Resentment is a sneaky enemy.
It's a little trickster, isn't it?
It is,
and it can lead to all sorts of other things that can become other things, and it then becomes a snowball into all sorts of unwanted things. But you have achieved so much in, I suppose, in a short length of time, one can say, because, you know, our life is our life, however long or short it is. But in a short length of time, because you're not old, what you
No.
have done and what you have achieved, and is something that you should be proud of. And people say, well, you can't be proud. That's not the thing. But you can be proud that you can say to yourself, and I always say this to myself, Jack, I say to myself, I'm really sorry, Mimi, that I actually tolerated so much nonsense from so many people and from so many things. And I'm really sorry that I didn't respect myself in so many instances. And I think we all have that to a greater or a lesser degree. So yes, you're right. Firstly and foremost, God in his divine wisdom and in his mercy and grace has saved you so many times.
Mm-hmm.
You have a big role to play here. This is no mean, this is a big role. It's not a small little act. This is the real deal. And all those people that troll or whoever do any sort of nonsense, it's really irrelevant. People sometimes say to me, I regret this. And I think, yes, I think we all have regrets in our life. But the most important thing is, what are we going to do now? Because in every second, we can change our life. You have shown that with your life. Your life is an example now to other people of how, no matter what trauma, tragedy, sorrow you have been through, you have managed to get up and not just, talk about things. You're actually doing things. Really, you should tap yourself on the back, Jack, because sometimes we need to be told this, that actually, listening to your story, who lives a life like that? Who could survive a life like that? Let alone get up and then try in your own way to make the world a better place.
There's the thing that I find is that there's still a lot of misunderstanding about people and addiction, and there's still a lot of hate there from some people. There's not a lot of education there for some people, and I feel that I've lived a certain life and I need to educate about that, and the people that I speak to on a daily basis and the people that I get on my own podcast and, the people that I'm interviewed by, like yourself, I always say that we should be open and brutally honest with ourselves and with other people, because people need to see that, and they also need to hear more men speaking about the toxicity that was in their lives. I was brought up in a time when, a man didn't cry, a man didn't show his emotions, a man didn't talk about his feelings. And over this past couple of years, I've lost so many people of my lifetime, but especially over this past couple of years, I've lost so many people to suicide. Because of that toxicity around how other people view suicide and view mental illness. And, there's so many men that are struggling out there. And I want to show that it's okay for men, even big manly men, to show their emotions, to show what's on the inside. And it's okay to cry. There's a lot of men think it's weak to cry, and it's the strongest thing that you can do. I think pretty much every interview I do, I hold myself back from ugly crying at times, because to be so honest and to lay yourself bare, it's not the easiest thing, and it's not the easiest thing for me. And it is one of my giants that I face, that I try to slay. I don't like, I don't like breaking down in front of people, but if it's going to be done, it is going to be done. And, no need to lie about it. No need to, if you
Yeah,
need to cry, you need to cry. Men need to cry. So,
absolutely. Everybody needs to cry. And, I always think of it like this. And someone once said to me a long time ago, Jack, that your greatest strength is actually in your gentleness. And because the gentle are the strongest, they can reveal their heart. And people say to me, you live in an ideal world, you have rose-colored glasses on, that world doesn't exist. And I said, well, actually, within me, that world does exist. And that's what's important, because I know there are terrible things out there, absolutely horrific things. And I've seen some terrible things in my life. But having said that, I haven't lost faith in humanity, because I do believe that people deserve a second chance. I do believe that when you are open with somebody, if you see someone shatter in front of you, the natural instinct, I still believe this, of any human being is to try to pick that person up, and in sharing your story, it actually encourages other people to share their story and hopefully to heal their story.
Yeah. Yeah. We need healing.
Yeah.
Words are a powerful thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why books can inspire love or inspire hate. Words can do this. They're a powerful thing. I've found them very healing. I've found creativity very healing. Because it opens up not just your heart but your soul. Because when when you write or when you speak words, or you're speaking honestly, it creates a gateway. And
That's true.
we can try to inspire love, or we can try to inspire hate. There are too many people out there trying to inspire hate, so I'm all about the love and education, showing love to your family, to your friends, to anybody that you can. Tell someone that you love them, because I love you are 3 words that can turn a heart tender again. And whether that's from a family member or whether that's from God himself, it's the most powerful thing that's out there.
And don't be afraid to love. I think this is the most important thing, that people are afraid to love and to be loved. But unless we do everything with love, and for me, it's something that runs through me very deeply. And everything I do, I try to do with love. Otherwise, I can't be bothered to do it. I just don't bother because it's just empty and tasteless. So I believe that we should allow that love to run within us, to flow within us. And it's like the love of your daughter has been incredible in saving your life. From how it sounds to me, it's been a constant thread of strength.
Yeah, it has. I suppose it's because we all search for it. We all want to be loved by someone. We can't be hated by everyone, can we?
No.
And, it is the deepest part of connection. The thing that trauma, the thing that hate, the thing that guilt, the thing that shame, the thing that addiction takes away from you is connection. it robs you of connection with yourself, with your family, with God. And when you start working on that, these connections start rebuilding. And I guess that's, you know, why I do a lot of the podcasts and, you know, speak to a lot of people, is to get that connection, that reconnection, because we need to be connected to the outside world, because we need to feel that love. We need to feel, you know, we all need you know, I don't seek approval from anyone but God. And I know that he leads me in ways where I not only connect with other people, but I get them connecting with other people as well. Because once you hear it, it opens you up to it. You know, I've tried to walk away from connection because I was scared. But like I say, it's facing these giants, and you know, what was it? David was 14 when he stood in front of Goliath, and took him down with a rock. And not only did this 14-year-old take him down with a rock, he went out and took his brothers down, his 3 brothers. You know, and he became a leader. He made mistakes, you know, but he became a leader. And you know, there's so many people that have been filled with doubt, and they've seen that there is another way.
That's important, to see that there is another way, and that wherever you've been, it doesn't mean that that's where you're going to end up and that's where you're going to go. It has to be the pivot point of one's life to, you know, and if you as a person, Jack, can stand there in a way being the bridge between helplessness, despair for people, to hope, I think that's a pretty good life.
Yeah, but I also think that we have to show the distinction between helplessness and hopelessness. You know, we are often helpless, but now very rarely hopeless.
Yes.
What I've had to realize is that to succeed, you need to lose, and you have to be able to accept those losses, because they build character. And I've seen a lot of loss, I've seen a lot of grief, I've seen a lot of hurt through my life, and I didn't think that I could deal with that. But it's built character. You know, whereas I built a character for myself and became who I wanted people to see. Actually, those things that were happening to me, you know, through the abuse, through the addiction, through the fighting, through the crime, through the homelessness, through the, you know, through everything, it's built resilience, it's built survival. You know, we start off and we are the victims of our circumstance. And we're in that victim mentality. And then we get through it and we realize that actually we've got a bit of resilience in there. So we become survivors. And we get the survivor mentality. And it's really, really easy to get stuck in that mentality and be a survivor for the rest of your life. And I was a survivor when you know, when I got clean, you know, I became a survivor. What people don't realize is that there is another level to that. And that's thriver. You know, we're not just meant to survive, we're meant to thrive. We are made to thrive. And that is what I'm doing now. That's what the people that I speak to on a regular basis are doing now. Because we've clicked that we need to go from survivor to thriver. and still we have survival mode and things like that. That's a perfect and natural thing. But in order to do what we need to do, and in order for me to carry a message, carry that message of hope, is that we need to thrive. Otherwise, if we're just stuck in survival mode, all we can talk about is survival.
Yes,
Well, there is a new life after that, and that is to thrive.
True.
That is to thrive in the family, in your community, in your work, to find new work, to find your path, your passion. And mine just happens to be words, and mine happens to be film, and I'm very, very blessed to be able to be involved in both.
I think it's beautiful, actually, what you've just said. It's from being a survivor to changing that, because you could be stuck always as a survivor. But the point is, we don't diminish that we have survived, but we have to move on. And we have to go from that state to another state, to move on as souls, to move on as people. And I think that's what you have shown. Your life is a testimony to that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, really, Jack.
You're very welcome.
Coming on. I'm really honoured, actually, that you were so honest and that you have been so candid in all of what you have said. It really means a lot, because for me, it's humbling that someone has spent, the past hour or so truly opening their heart and soul. It means a lot. And I'm very, very grateful to you.
And thank you for having me on and indulging me while I speak. I did warn you that I can go over the hour. But,
No, it doesn't matter. There's, the guests lead the show. I always say that. But before you go, so if people want to contact you or to know more about your work, are you happy for that to happen?
Yes, please.
Okay, where can they get hold of you?
So they can get hold of me, like I said before, through the website, which is jwgreg.wordpress.com. Facebook.com/JW Greg, which is the Accidental Journalist Facebook page. That's where you can see a lot of my interviews, and you can get links to the books and things like that. Drop me a message on there. It's got a message facility, and you can drop me a private inbox there if you've got any. So, if anybody's got any questions, even if it's just to say, Jack, why do you speak so much? I always welcome people to jump in my inbox and say what they need to say, really. I believe in the freedom of speech. And if people really adverse to what I've said, then please do drop in my inbox and tell me, because I believe that everybody should have a say, and we shouldn't be censoring anybody, no matter what your belief. We should be educating, but not censoring. Yes, through that. There's a contact form on the website. Click on that, and that will take you straight to my email.
Okay. And with regards to the books and everything?
Yeah, so the books...
They're all in print, are they? Are they available in hardback or ebook? What sort of format?
They are available for £1.99 on Kindle, or free on Kindle Unlimited. And they're available in paperback for £9.95. Through Amazon. Or if you want a signed copy, drop me a message, and I'll do one for about £12, including postage.
Well, that would be nice.
I won't charge any extra for the book. I'll just post it out. If you drop me your address and I'll give you a where you can pay. And I'll gladly send them out. I've got another. I'm currently personally sold out, but I've got some more coming in the next few days. So yeah, please do drop me a message or get them on Amazon. The first book is called A Personal Apocalypse, The Poetic Ramblings of a Troubled Man. And the second one is called Between the Streetlights and Red Lights, Escaping Human Trafficking, Sexual Slavery and Exploitation.
Okay, that would be a very interesting set of books to read, for sure. Now, before you go, Jack, I always ask my guests this at the end. So as they have the last word, so to speak, in a couple of lines, something from you, from your heart, that you would like to share with people that could help people out there when they're feeling down, when they're feeling that they can't go on, or they have lost that hope in life. A couple of lines of something that's helped you in your life.
I would have to say, you might think that you're alone. You might think that nobody dare to listen. You might think that nobody loves you. These are all lies. You are loved by more people than you think. You're loved by me too. There is always a way. You're robbed of your connection. You're disconnected. Please connect with someone, with anybody. Connect with me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to leave it on that. And I want to say to you, I wish you all the very best in life, Jack. And keep shining that light and keep showing those people out there, all of us kindred souls, out of the darkness.
I will try.
That's all we can do.
Yeah, I will do my very best.
Take care. And do come back again. And if you have any more sort of projects going on, or you have any sort of news for us, come back and share. It would be delightful to have you back on.
I will. It'll be an honor.
You look after yourself.
And thank you for being such a great host.
Oh, thank you very much.
You know, it's really nice to be interviewed by someone who is empathic and softly spoken, and really knows the difficulties of some other people. I there have been some podcasts that unfortunately the connection hasn't been there because of the way that some people are. So yeah, thank you for being such a great host and being a great guide really in this conversation.
Thank you. And thank you for being such a fabulous guest. That's the important thing.
Thank you.
Oh, have a wonderful evening. I hope it's relaxing. I hope it's peaceful. And I hope there's some coffee and snacks to be had after this.
Yeah, I'm going to go get my coffee now.
All right, then. Take care, Jack.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Jack Gregory. What a story. Like every story in life, it is so unique to us. Thank you so much for joining me today. You are absolutely appreciated. Until next time, enjoy life and stay safe. Lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.